Hi, it's time for Foreplay with sex therapist Laurie Watson and psychotherapist Tony Del Medico. Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy is your safe place to talk about all things intimate and sexual, where we help you get the most out of your love life.
You can check us out on the web at foreplayrst.com and send us an email if you like. Straight talk and sex talk. Laurie, where will Foreplay lead us today?
Hey, Tony, this is our initial episode, and we are so excited, no pun intended, to talk about foreplay and describe what it is. And
foreplay. Who needs foreplay anyway, Laurie?
Well, I think women definitely need foreplay. And I think that this is kind of my worry, is that sometimes men don't want to do this, that they feel like it's some sort of price of admission. They have to do all this work, this physical work. And it's true, I think that men do have to do more physical work to get a woman there. I think women in response have to do more mental work to maintain desire. In order to want to have sex, women have to put it in their minds and think about, whereas men think about it so much more because their bodies have so much more testosterone.
So foreplay is really where it all begins for a woman then.
Right. Foreplay is sex for women. That is usually when women climax, is during the stimulation before the main event.
Well, I got to tell you, for men, that's news, because we thought that sex was what it was all about, intercourse. We didn't realize that foreplay was the sex for a woman.
Yeah, I think that men think that their performance in sexual intercourse is what has to happen, right? They have to have a great erection. They have to have this erection last for a really long time, and that's what's going to bring her pleasure. And, of course, that's what makes them anxious sometimes during sex. But It's really the touching. Great foreplay is about attunement. It's about tuning into her body and her pleasure and knowing, what she might be feeling by either her movements or her responsiveness. We would love it if she would open up and talk about it, if not show and tell. But, getting a woman to do that is going to take some safety and some time and a relationship where she feels like he wants to know.
I'm coming at it from a different angle altogether. We're calling it foreplay, and you had mentioned a man has to work harder. And a lot of times with the couples and the individuals that I see that have been in relationships for 5, 10, 15 years, a lot of the play has gone out of the relationship. And so I think for us, we're advocating putting the play back in foreplay. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think that so many couples that come to see me in my counseling room, they are efficient. They're trying to get something done. They remember this time when they were dating and when it was all about sex. And they would spend hours in bed together. There would be all kinds of foreplay.
And now there's work and there's kids and there's in-laws and there is no time for play. Almost the society or the relationship becomes goal-driven and by definition gets more efficient, or the pressure to be more efficient is there.
Right, and women seem to, sometimes it gets relegated to the list. Oh, this is one more thing I got to do to keep my marriage happy. And they are not necessarily allowing themselves, okay, I'm going to have downtime. I'm going to have playtime. It's going to be about me and pleasure. It's like, okay, I got to keep him happy.
Right, and I think for couples, it's a lot easier just to climb into bed, turn on the TV, and watch whatever's on that night, as opposed to, and most couples spend an hour or 2 hours doing that, as opposed to running a bath, lighting some candles, begin to set some space for them to play.
Lighting candles, Tony, you're really going all out. Golly. I remember this one woman I had, a patient who, they had been having sex like once a quarter. And she
Sounds
agreed,
like a CPA, like clockwork.
She had agreed eventually to have sex twice a week. So this guy had gone from having sex once a quarter to, what is that, 13 times as many times.
A 13,000% increase.
Yeah, and she had a list of things that she would like him to do. They were small. They didn't cost. One of them cost money, but hardly any of them did. One of the things on her list is just what you said. It was set the scene, a little romance, light a candle. She wanted him to shave before. She wanted him to shower and shave.
Dental hygiene.
She wanted him to wear tight jeans and his cowboy boots.
Nice.
We live in the South.
Right.
And, it was...
Well, even in the North, the woman likes a man in cowboy boots, that's for sure.
Yeah, that can be very sexy.
Yeah.
And all this foreplay, was really about setting it up setting the scene, seduction, and they were hardly any time or money involved. I think one of them was ballroom dance. I got to say, a woman loves a man who can dance. But you know what he said? After getting sex once a quarter to 13 times a quarter or however many times. No, 26 times, right?
Right.
He says, oh, that's going to take so much work.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get it. Like, you know, his resistance to doing what she needed, this was just in the setup, let alone, I mean, she said, you know, he would no more think to do something creative in bed than he would think to light the candle. Right. And I think some of the foreplay, the discouragement in women is that, you know, maybe she's told him over and over what she does like, and he doesn't do it. He doesn't remember, or in a moment of passion, you know, he can't even think. And so then he forgets, and she doesn't tell him again what she needs to. And so what happens, their repertoire gets really cut off. You know, they're doing less and less in bed that is less interesting. And so neither of them are sort of fascinated by this or scintillated by what's happening in bed. It becomes this vanilla experience. And like you said, maybe they would rather just watch a little TV.
Well, maybe the playfulness has gone completely out the window. She's giving him a short list of things that could be very playful for her. And he's saying no. He's foreclosing on that completely. I don't want to play. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
And as adults, there are very few places as adults that we can play anymore. And we know how kids do it and we know what it looks like. But I think around sexuality and intimacy is a wonderful place for adults to begin to play again freely. And I agree with you, whether it's the male or the female, oftentimes things are foreclosed upon. I'm not going to be playful and easy and free with you.
Right. And sex is really that place that is the crossroads of our romantic interest, our love, and our primitive childhood needs for affection. That's where it all comes together, and why sex is so critical to the bonding in a relationship. I think what you said, though, about men sometimes being foreclosed upon by a woman. I mean, maybe he really does want to give her foreplay. He enjoys touching her. He longs to see her turn on. That's his biggest turn on, is when she flips the switch and really gets into it. But somehow or another, she's anxious, she's inhibited, so she shuts him down. And all the things that he wants to do in bed to her, you know, she won't let him.
I'm thinking about anxious and inhibited. There are also a lot of women that are just plain worn out. Oftentimes there's inequality in relationships where she's doing everything with respect to raising the kids, doing the laundry, cleaning the house, and he waltzes in after 7 or 8 hours of work with the grown-ups and expects to have this sensuous woman just melting in his arms. And none of that is foreplay for a couple. Right.
Gina Ogden's a sex therapist, and she says, you know, that fair play is just as important as foreplay. And a lot of women, I think, do shut down sexual desire because of unequal loads in the relationship. Maybe she's doing too much of the household work, the childcare, and the financial burden.
She's exhausted.
Yeah, and I would say resentment is the monster under the bed. I mean, resentment does shut down sex. But I would say back to foreplay, this idea that, you know, for some men, they do want to do this, and they can't even get her to start. I mean, it's like women in long-term relationship often flip-flop. Their desire somehow or another comes second to their arousal. So, you know, when we're dating and we fall in love, we feel this tremendous physiological sense of desire, even as women. And then once we're married, you know, you're getting stuff done, and desire just doesn't seem to be as present. You know, we can't, it doesn't alight, but every once in a while, like this butterfly of chance. But women, I think it's true. We've done studies that if they get started, if they will allow their partner to touch them, to help them ignite their body, then after they're aroused, desire kicks in and they want to do it.
And I think the if is the big word there, if they can get started. And as we're thinking about this, I mean, from a psychological standpoint, a woman is asked to wear the mask of motherhood. She is now asked to wear the mask of professional in the workplace. She's doing all of the other things, and I think it's very hard after a while in a committed relationship to find that mask of deep womanhood and deep sensuality, and that mask gets lost, certainly with the coming of the first child, for sure with the second child. And you wind up with couples that haven't had sex for months. You mentioned a quarter. Couples that haven't had sex for 2 years.
Yeah.
3 years. I mean, that's a sexless relation. Yeah. And there's no play.
Really sad.
At all
really
between
sad.
the couples. And how does a woman get this mask of motherhood and the mask of the angry father that's glued to their faces off to find their own sensuality again? I mean, and I think play is a wonderful place to do that. And like you're saying, if you can put yourself in the vicinity of each other to begin to play, to begin to touch, to begin to open space, it could melt some of those masks away pretty quickly, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really important in terms of our multiple roles once we marry. I mean, sometimes at the very ceremony, kind of sex is over, right? I mean, we step into the role of wife, let alone mother.
Yeah.
And,
oftentimes people say that changes on the wedding night. Even
on the
something
wedding night.
shifts dramatically, or some point during the honeymoon. So it's a palpable shift.
And I think I understand why. We can talk about that later, but truly the veil is lifted on kind of the shadow part of our partner. And once we marry, even at the ceremony sometimes, and the things that we've been so drawn to now become frightening, because they're reminiscent of our childhoods. And that's
now we're getting to the good stuff, Laurie.
The good stuff,
I think we need some foreplay. Well, it's time for a break. Stay with us for the second half of our segment on foreplay. We're halfway there. Coming up in our next segment, we'll finish up with our 3 tips for jump-starting foreplay in your relationship.
Wanting sex again. How to rediscover desire and heal a sexless marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com and sign up for their next couples retreat weekend, hosted by Laurie Watson. awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
Welcome back to Foreplay with sex therapist Laurie Watson and psychotherapist Tony Del Medico. Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy is your safe place to talk about all things sexual and intimate, and it's where we want to help you get the most out of your sex life.
You can find us on the web at foreplayrst.com and send us an email. We'd like to hear what you have to say about today's topic, and it's a big one, Laurie. We're talking about one of our favorites, foreplay.
That's right.
In the first part of the show today, you dropped a big bomb on us in the room. You said that foreplay is actually the sex for women.
Yeah,
and
I
that
think
blew me away, because most guys think that intercourse is the sex, and you're saying
no,
foreplay is where it all happens.
Right, and I think it's a misnomer, right? I mean, foreplay is saying it's before the big game, because that's a male way of thinking about it. But touching and being stimulated and enjoying each other's body, that is usually where women climax. That's the moment for her. And so she wants a lot more of that. And sometimes he's just doing that as fast as he can to make her ready to get to sexual intercourse.
So at Foreplay RST, we're really promoting foreplay as the main event.
Yeah. At least it is for women.
Female orgasm should be happening during foreplay. So guys, do you hear that? It's not first base, second base, and then on to try to hit a home run. You're really trying to get that home run out of her right up front with taking time for foreplay.
Right. I mean, I definitely think as far as a good pattern, her climaxing first, a usual pattern, that helps, because then she may climax again the second time, right?
And he can relax and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and I think that when men, in their effort to do foreplay, they understand, okay, I need to do something to make her lubricated, to make her ready for the event. And so they just go for it. You know, they start touching her genitals right away. It's almost like this is a magic formula. You know, I know I have to do foreplay now, and so I'm going to go for it and push the right buttons, and then she's going to turn on. And so many women are like, quit. You know, it's like, it's too much. It's too fast. You're grabbing me, and it feels so invasive until her body is sort of aroused enough for it to feel good.
And yet somehow that worked in their dating sequence.
Yeah, I
or
know.
Did it?
You know what?
I saw you look away.
No,
or did it?
I don't think it really worked quite as much as we think it worked. I mean, there was so much fantasy going into that moment. I mean, she woke up in the morning, she thought about it, she shaved her legs, put on something pretty underneath. Her own mind and fantasy life was building toward that moment.
So what you're saying is foreplay had already been happening with that couple long before
in her mind.
Her.
Yeah, and also, I mean,
right.
He's planning, right?
Right.
I mean, they're
both
day.
Planning.
Yeah, their whole day is set aside for this moment when they have 6 hours of uninterrupted time together. I mean, how many married couples set aside 6 hours of time just to go out to dinner, be together, hang out, have lots of sex, and they don't have any, and they don't care if they have responsibilities in the morning. They're going to take as much time as they need. So that's what makes it so great, is this priority on foreplay and on each other. And I think that that's why sex is so great in the beginning.
So, yeah, and I think after being in a relationship for 10 or 15 years, you and I both see lots of individuals and lots of couples where not only is sex gone, but foreplay is gone as well. So, and I think the advocacy to return to foreplay is huge, because when you meet a couple or individual, you don't say, go home and have more sex. That's not what you tell the couple.
No.
Go have more intercourse. You tell them, put yourself in each other's space. Get back to a place where you can begin to play together. And foreplay is that piece. So I would imagine you're prescribing way more foreplay than intercourse.
I would say, foreplay is about pleasure. And you're right. I mean, we want people to feel again, to feel each other, to feel what's happening in their own bodies. I think I like the way you say it sometimes, Tony, just to sink into the body. I mean, that awareness of what you're feeling cuts out the anxiety of what you think your partner is thinking about if you're taking too long.
Right. And I think coming from the male perspective with the men I visit with, oftentimes they come in complaining that they're just not getting enough sex. They're not getting sex. And I think reframing that and saying, what are you doing with her with respect to foreplay is the answer.
Right.
It's not a demand for intercourse. It's a real need for a connection.
And I think women are apologizing for taking too long. They feel the demand from their male partner for more sex. They think, okay, he needs it more often, and so I just need to give it to him because, I got so much to get done. I have this list. And so, and they know that their body is going to take all this time. And so they say, he just wants to get the sex. That's what they begin to think. And sometimes for him, it's really the reverse. They think, well, she doesn't enjoy it that much. And so I just got to get it while it's hot, essentially, and I don't know how to turn her on. I don't know how to touch her. And so then they stop. And this whole thing devolves into this efficient kind of cycle, that isn't so much fun anymore. And then sex stops and people wonder why. Why are we not having very much sex? I mean, I think the foreplay, like you've talked about, is the secret to going back to it for both people enjoying it. I had this girlfriend who, I know she married this guy really because he was so good at foreplay. He would take hours and hours with her, and then at some point in the marriage, it devolved to this shower shout out. He would say, "Hey, hon, you want some nookie?" And they would start their day that way, in the shower, having a quickie, standing up, where I know it's really sexy to think about having sex in the shower, and the movies show that.
Right.
But it is not so sexy for her. It washes away her natural lubrication. She doesn't have enough time, generally. The water's going to run out, right? The frickin' hot water's going to run out before she can climax, And so, I think that, it's a great idea, but all this time that he took with her and the reason she was so drawn to him sexually is now washed away. And
so he had shortened it to a shout out in the shower, which primarily was a nice way for him to start the day.
Yes.
But not her.
Yeah, I think that many times men think, okay, I paid this price. I've courted her, I've dated her, I've done all this stuff. And now, I get to have sex whenever I have, every day, right?
It's my divine right. The patriarchy is saying it's my divine right now.
And I think women are counting on men to turn on their eroticism instead of feeling like, wow, I've committed here to fidelity and to having an erotic life. They don't realize that they need an erotic core that is strong, that can be sexual in and of themselves.
So somehow in the relationship, it goes from an erotic life to a neurotic life.
Yeah,
With the misery between couples that go on, because there can get to be some crazy around it.
Yeah.
The anxiety, the frustration, the anger, the wounding. So, and it is this initial idea that you're committing to a life of eroticism with one person. And how does a couple tend that?
Right. And I think
foreplay is a wonderful way to do that.
Foreplay is, and I think that so many people think, I knew how to do it. It was first base, second base, third base, home, and their routine becomes a rut.
Right.
They do find a few things that work, and so they move that to this rut way of having sex. It's get in bed, pull down the sheets, maybe clean up first, do the dirty deed, and then go clean up, and then go to sleep. And it's this formula that becomes so unerotic that, it doesn't even matter if they're touching enough. It's just, there's no edge. There's no excitement anymore about it. There's no variety. And so, kind of the whole thing drops off.
Right. And so how do couples put the foreplay back in? How do you move that piece back to the top of the list? If you're saying that piece is important for everything else that comes afterwards, can a couple sit down and talk about foreplay, or does that even take the fun out of it?
Well, I think it's about priority. When we were dating, and the reason sex was so great is we did really set aside an enormous amount of time for sexual pleasure. A priority in terms of, maybe it isn't, okay, we're going to have sex on Saturday morning, but saying, you know what, Saturday morning is ours. Maybe we do take the kids over to the mother-in-law's, or, we set some time aside to just be together, unwind, talk some, have some playtime. One favorite way in the winter, it's cold here right now, and, I suggest is get in the bath together. There's no phones. There's no TVs. Hopefully there's no TVs in the bathroom, right?
Right.
And couples maybe soak in that tub. They're warm, and we all know women like to have sex more when their feet are warm. I hope you all know that. They really do. That helps. But, and then you're clean and you're naked, and, guess what? Maybe it'll happen.
Good things happen.
Yeah, I had a marriage counselor tell me when I was very young, the best way to save a marriage is have a garden tub. Because it's that connection time, and it's setting aside something as a priority and then seeing what comes out of that.
So, Laurie, a lot of good stuff today on foreplay. It seems like we could just have episode after episode of what may help couples reconnect, which brings us to our 3 tips for jumpstarting foreplay in your relationship. And the first one I think is huge. And you had mentioned that foreplay is the sex for women. And I think that's important for fellas to remember.
Right. It's not the pregame. And
I think for guys, it's very important. This 20-20 rule, slow down. It's a 40-minute game here. Don't let the horses run fast out of the gate.
Exactly. And I think that another tip is to ask women what they want in foreplay. Don't assume that you know. And I know some men say, I'm dying for that. I would love it if she would tell me what she would like, but I can't get her to talk. One of my girlfriends said, that's kind of a discussion that I could have in a hot tub with a glass of wine. Maybe then I could open up and share it. It's probably not something that she wants to say in the moment, well, do this, do that, because that adds to the pressure. She needs to be relaxed and maybe talk about what she likes, what turns her on at another time.
Not
a little
in the heat
bit
of
of
the
wine.
moment. Guys,
maybe not in the moment.
Guys, check your ego and have the conversation. The ladies are waiting to give you the secrets to the kingdom.
That's right, the secrets to the kingdom. So thank you so much for tuning in and turning on to this episode of Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. You can find us on the web at foreplayrst.com. Please send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. This is Laurie Watson, sex therapist.
And psychotherapist Tony Del Medico.
We look forward to having you join us for some more Foreplay. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.